some life experience.
Yeah, well, that's why the agency breaks you out when you first join, when you first, offer the job. You're either a PT, now I forget what it's called, or a CST. So basically with a PT, those are the kids right out of college, I can't say never done anything, but don't have real world experience, quote unquote.
To draw on, right?
Whereas CSTs, which is the route that we went, we had been military, we had been around the world, things like that. And that determines when you go to your training, whatever that training is going to be, because as a PT, you can stay up to headquarters, what is it, up to 3 years, I believe it is, doing on-the-job training, because they want you to gain that maturity, that professional maturity, whereas with a CST, they're assuming that you have that professional maturity that you can just pick up, do your training.
This is your task. Make this task happen on this timeline within these standards.
I don't know. I never met a case officer who started in their early 20s who succeeded. Because they've gone through various regimes, right? Like you're talking about the PT thing. At various points, they've gotten rid of that. Played with the idea of letting people, not just played with, adopted the idea of letting people come in when they're 22 straight out of college. Some of them are great people. I mean, in terms of natural ability, brains, all that stuff. Particularly as a case officer, there's no way you can handle that job at 22 years old. They get in trouble, they burn out, it's too much. You got to have life experience or you get chewed up. And it's a shame because then you got to have somebody, a guy, a woman who probably could have been really great if they showed up when they were 26, 28 years old, something like that. But now they're trashed and they're out of the organization.
Has there ever been an option, have they thought about trying not to bring them in that early to prevent the burnout?
Yeah, I mean, they have at various points. They've swung back and forth at various points in my career. They brought them in as young as 22, put them straight into training. Then they've tried to compromise, like the PT thing where they are now. It doesn't work. I mean, it's just too much. It's just, it's way too much pressure and the demands are too great. I talk to a lot of young people now who are coming to me saying, giving advice. And after I'm done giving them all the advice about the organization, if they're 22, 23 years old, the first thing I say is, awesome, go do something else. I don't care if it's backpacking around Europe or working for a nonprofit or joining the military. Do whatever you do. When you look at what the OSS is a model of this, or the same thing for the SOE, right? The British Special Operations Executive on which the OSS was patterned. Look at all the guys and gals that were in those outfits. They brought tons of life experience. One of my favorite stories has to do with Patrick Leigh Fermor operating in Crete and kidnapping the German commander of Crete and spiriting him off the island. Patrick Leigh Fermor was a writer, and he'd been backpacking around Europe for his whole, he wasn't a super young guy. The last 15 years he basically spent wandering around learning every European language and learning the history. And that's the guy that they called upon to throw into Crete. He wasn't, their biggest problem actually, the Brits, true story, was some of their guys they put into Greece. They'd all learned their Greek classical education, so they were all ready to go speak to Homer.
Welcome to
what they had to do was
read the Odyssey, and then they had to figure out.
Street speak.
Yeah, now they're talking to a bunch of Greeks, and it's like some American thinking, I'm talking to William Shakespeare here.
Well, it's like, it's like, so as a graduate at DLI, it's the same bullshit. Like when I was in MSA, I did like, I don't know, 8 or 9 months of modern standard Arabic at DLI, and it was like, this is a train wreck. This is like, it's like, it would be like me learning English at Oxford and learning like Hugh Grant, like proper Queen's English, and then being dropped in fucking pronunciation. It's still English, but it ain't. And you're instantly gonna stick out. So I went to my sergeant major and was like, this was pre-Global War on Terror. So I went to my sergeant major and was like, look, as an academically trained linguist, I can tell you that this is absolutely worthless to be teaching me MSA. I've already been given all of the parameters for grammar. You throw me a dictionary and put me in a different language. And that's exactly what she did. She was like, okay, so you think you'd be all right if I put you in an Arabic-speaking country? And I was like, I can probably not get shot, but I can learn if I need to. But the bottom line was that they're teaching you MSA. modern standard Arabic, and that is not a relevant language unless you're dealing with a fucking diplomat or a PhD or somebody like that.
And even then, they'll break into colloquialisms that you don't
Yeah,
know.
right. Yeah, because when you get into like Fusan and all that shit, I mean, so one of the coolest things, if I got to preach about language in the military or language in the government at all,
But you are doing that.
I am. Is there a soapbox?
Right there.
Well, it's a huge waste of money, man. Like at the time, they were DLI was graduating like 285 Arab linguists a year, and Arabic was 63 weeks. 2% of the linguist population in the DoD would pass the Cat 4 language on the first try. So you were never out of there in 63 weeks. And Monterey, California ain't a cheap place to be, right? So it's a huge waste of money. So we had a guy, he was an ambassador, Ambassador Peck. I don't know what his first name was, but he was the only dude at the time in the State Department that had served in every single Arabic-speaking country during government service. He was the only single one. And I'm in this room, and by this time I had actually jumped over to Turkish. I was studying Turkish. So in my battalion, my fucking 229th in my battalion at DLI, for the entire Middle Eastern school, ME1 and ME2, there were like 2 Army people that were not studying Arabic. It was me that was doing Turkish, so everyone called me Turk, and this other girl who was studying Hebrew, everyone called her He. So I'm in this room, and this was the largest battalion.
Creative.
You see how these linguists
Thus
just
the need
pass.
for EEO class.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
Don't
you
touch the
do.
golden triangle.
But so we're in this thing. He's like, I'm going to give you guys the most important information you're going to get about learning modern standard Arabic. He said, modern standard Arabic is a golden key to a vast empty room. And you heard about 800 soldiers go, because like they're busting their ass every day in that language for nothing.
Did you do language training?
I did not. I had some Arabic in college. And,
Chad did. You went to Seoul, right?
and some Japanese I picked up over in Japan.
I never felt that way. I mean, about agency language training. I mean,
Yeah.
You guys have much
You
better
guys,
language
you guys.
training.
I got locked in a room with a very unpleasant Greek woman one-on-one for 11 months.
Yeah.
It's not like
Wasn't fun, but when I walked out, I didn't speak a word of Greek when I walked out. I went straight out on the streets. I could not just function, I could recruit, I could do everything.
Yeah.
See, and for me, that's what it comes down to. Despite having, a college degree and all that stuff, I'm a knuckle dragger. So the way I look at it is what I'm learning going to not only get me across from that person, but when I speak to them, is it going to insult them?
Right.
Because I'm using that Oxford level
Right.
language, and they're like, "Who do you think you're talking to?" And then get up and walk out, or or am I going to be able to speak that guttural language or whatever, and then connect on that level?
Yeah, well, and then there's I mean, just think about how much nuance, right? I mean, if you're trying to recruit me in English, vice versa, and you're couching every little word, right, exactly how you're pitching this. You're not just conveying a thought, everything exactly how you phrased it, your choice of verb.
It sounds canned.
Okay, now you got to do that in another language to somebody,
Yeah.
Well, that's why for some of the Chinese linguists that I knew, recruitment, they use that as my Chinese is terrible, so it was a rapport building
Yes.
technique. Teach me how to speak better Chinese.
So I would argue, because I was going to say the same thing about Japanese. I've never been schoolhouse trained in Japanese. I'm actually not really that functional personally. I don't believe that I am, but
I'm trained by lots of Japanese.
yeah. But so that's the trick. I'd be like, I would be in the door. I'd be like, excuse me. Do you speak any English?
Right.
And it doesn't matter if the dude is we call them agents. They were the guys that would go like Ukraine, Philippines, and pick up chicks, bring back to Japan, snag their passports, and be like, "You're not really going to be a model. You're a hooker."
Human trafficking.
Yeah. So they would traffic. Do what?
You call those guys agents?
They called themselves agents, talent agents. Yeah, they were called
Talent
Not
agents.
kidding.
Okay.
not kidding.
I'm the
about
only
that.
one drinking.
So they were called agents. Yes. But so I mean, I'd go up to those dudes. I'd see them. They'd be with a pack of blonde-haired, blue-eyed Nordic women at a grocery store in a small town, right? And I'd know that those dudes were agents. And so that's what I did. I rolled and be like, "Hey, excuse me, do you speak English?" I mean, my Japanese was fine, but I mean, like even on the site, like in my bio, I would even hire people. I'd go to meets with people a little bit and be like, "Hey, my Japanese is really shitty. Can you go with me just to talk to this guy?" And like, I knew exactly what everybody was saying at any time, but nobody at the table knew that I knew what was going on. So I mean, again, my ploy is like deception is the key in these things. And
Some of the best cover we were able to come up with is I would say to somebody like me, looking like they should speak any Chinese whatsoever, and actually putting that hard work